Hello, sportsmen. Hang on to your seats. We've got a good show coming your way. I haven't come clean with the size of that lake trout that Doug Tabor caught at Rawhide Lake last summer, but our downrigger methods rose to the challenge. That trout was nothing short of colossal. You'll hear the story, and we'll get into your ideas on what regulations you think should be considered on deer baiting. Stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost, looking at the outdoors through the eyes of a practical sportsman.
I don't know how much this weighs, but I know he's more than 18.
Look around the fish. We call it the Rawhide Challenge, fishing for lake trout the last few days of June in this Canadian lake that John Middleton, owner of Frontier Lodge, said would be an uphill climb.
Go for something different than lake trout late in July because they get down deep in the cold water, and they're tough to catch then. An old pro like myself and a few old friends of mine will go out and catch them in July and August with lead core line. For another person, it'd be almost impossible.
For another person, it'd be almost impossible. Hey, I told John that if I brought some portable downriggers to Rawhide, along with portable flashers and graphs to locate the bottom and the fish, I could catch lake trout during the summer, too.
I have faith in you.
Yeah, so do I. So do I. There we go. At the end of June, when most people couldn't catch them, we had no trouble landing plenty of average-sized Canadian lake trout. And Doug Tabor tied into one that wasn't so average.
Yeah, we got one.
Yeah, you got one.
We got one.
Well, show it. Oh my God.
We got enough for all of us. We sure did. I think we got dinner.
Oh my God. Hold it way up.
This is as far as the rope goes here, Johnny.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
That's unbelievable. So what's the story? Tell me the story. In there.
Well, you know, we started out this morning over where John had caught those fish. And we didn't catch anything. And we come back in, had lunch, and asked Ron where we should go. And he says, well, there's school fish around the corner there, but mostly they're small ones. And we went over and set our downriggers, and Tim told me, hey, try the other side. It's a little bit deeper over on the other side there. So we trolled over there, and Rod went off and was pounding, and I thought, Matt, how deep are we? And he said 80 foot, and I said, well, I only had it set at 60. Can't be the bottom. And got him. He fought like a Chinook. He took line, stayed right down underneath the boat pounding. How long? Probably 10, 15 minutes? Oh, man. Wow. It was great.
Is that the rod and reel you caught it on right behind you there?
Yeah.
Let's see that.
Yeah, just really it's I don't know that it's made for these kind of fish, to tell you the truth. I didn't know we'd be catching anything this big. Don Morgan was a nice guy, give me some nice cowbells.
Yeah, this is just the really for walleye is what he designed these for.
These are designed for walleye, and I looked at the rigs that people had used up here before, and it looked pretty much like what he made.
And what's this?
That's an Evil Eye lure made by Red Eye.
Huh.
I had a minnow on it. You wonder what a big fish is doing eating a minnow that's about that long.
That was the size of the minnow?
But that's what he was hungry for, yeah.
And you caught him on this downrigger right here.
Caught him on that little mini
that we've taken a lot of flack for. People think this is goofball up here.
Canadians don't think that you should use downriggers. And I think the other downrigger fishermen, you know, where's your lead core line? But that makes a nice downrigger for packing in. It's real nice and lightweight. The ball, I think, is 3.5 pounds. Get you down to, I don't know, there must be 70 foot of wire on there, because at 60 foot there ain't a whole lot left.
Look at the tail on this one, Matt. You want to hold that tail up there?
Is,
what do you make of that? That's been chased and.
Well, look at his fin here. Look at that.
That's split.
This is, I don't know how old of a fish, but this is a pretty old fish. As a matter of fact, if we could freeze him,
yes.
I'd have Tim mount him.
Yes, I'm sure. We're going to want to do that.
We were pretty happy. We didn't have a net or anything in the boat, and we fought him for a long time, and he finally got tired out. Matty reached down and grabbed him, got him in by the gills there. I don't know. We got a delier that goes to 28 pounds.
Put it on there.
And he's bigger than that.
Took it out.
Where's the delier?
He's bigger than that.
Well, Matty, while Tim's getting the delier, let's hear your side of the story.
Well,
Did he tell it right?
He told it right. I just got rigged up, and Doug gave me a lure that I decided not to go with this morning, and put it on, and should have took it this morning.
We use the tape measure on here goes to
36,
36.
34, 36?
Yeah, Doug, if you can turn that so that I can see it when you hold it up, that'd be
So you
great.
see the weight.
The tape on here
You
goes
move
to
those
30.
figures.
The tape on
Oh,
here,
bottomed out at 28.
the tape on here goes to 34. That bottomed out too.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's about 40 inches long.
Oh,
Pound wise, I don't know, but he's heavy.
Yes. Boy, he's got his chin is bumped up, his fins are bumped up.
It's got a couple leech marks on the belly there too.
Yeah.
This fish has been around for a little while.
Yes, it has.
I can't wait to show him to Ron there.
Hold him up trophy book style one more time,
I can't
With the
wait
tail.
to
Grab the tail.
I can't wait to show him to Ron at the lodge. His biggest is 18 pounds. I don't know how much this weighs, but I know he's more than 18.
On an airport scale, this trout weighed 48 pounds. Back at camp, the Fountain family from Lansing was waiting at the dock. Now, they knew we had something to show them, but they didn't know what. You've caught some lake trout up here.
Yep.
You have?
Yep.
Anybody else?
Yep. David,
David?
and Chris, and Sophie.
Okay, and how big were they?
Oh,
18 inches, 20.
20 was
Like,
the biggest.
like put
and-
your hands like
yeah,
how long they
They're
were.
at least this big.
There's no fish that big in this lake. How big do you think maybe like the biggest fish you'd expect this week would be?
Oh, I
They
don't
caught.
know. They
They've
caught
been
an-
catching little ones.
So what do you think the biggest one that would come out of here would be?
Well, last week we heard there was an 18 pounder, so
Yeah.
we think we should be able to do better than that.
Better than that.
Yeah.
How the heck would we do better than that? You guys catch any fish?
One small one.
One small one?
We got one. Tim, we got one.
Oh,
Oh my God! Look at the size of that fish.
oh that's
One was all we got though.
Jeez, oh Pete.
Where'd you get it?
Isn't that something?
That is huge.
Bottomed out the Delia at 28 pounds. Was over, what, 36 inches.
Over 34. I'd say about 40 inches, but
Holy mackerel.
Huh?
Wait till Ron sees that.
he'll change his mind about downrigger, Tony.
Now, was that worth waiting for?
Oh, yeah. Stand right next to him.
Here, let me see. Let me see. Sophie and fish.
It's about the same.
Fish is heavier than Sophie.
Fish is heavier.
Oh, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I believe it.
Pick up Sophie then.
Yeah.
Pick her up. And
Fish is heavier than a
Here, let's see. Yeah, you're right.
huh?
Fish
How
is
much
heavier.
does Sophie weigh?
What's she weigh?
40?
I don't know. New record, huh?
This may be. Yeah. Well, Doug's lake trout weighed 8 pounds more than Sophie. The biggest laker to come out of Rawhide Lake in many years, maybe the biggest one ever. It was caught with ordinary fishing tackle, along with portable downriggers and depth finders. This kind of equipment is not expensive. It's supremely practical for all kinds of fishing, and as you can see, it helped Doug Tabor meet the Rawhide challenge. The question of law we've wrestled with in recent shows is, should hunting deer over bait be banned? Now, this question has generated a lot of heated debate, and the consensus in the stacks of letters I've received seems to basically follow the response which Dave Ritchie got to his survey in the Detroit News, which showed that 77% say the DNR should not regulate baiting on private land. 73% rejected the idea of limiting hunters to 5 gallons of bait. I guess banning something in order to solve a social problem just doesn't sit well with most sportsmen. So what do we do about those problems that bother people? Well, on last week's show, I posed the question, what restrictions do you think are appropriate for baiting deer? Now, there were those who feel the amount of bait that a hunter can put out should be limited. Lowell Frank from Mount Pleasant. I support baiting, but it should be limited to a coffee can size or smaller, or 2 or 3 apples and a handful of acorns. Josh Lewis from Concord. I think you should be able to bait, but only 3 pounds of bait. Dave Carafino from Midland. Baiting is a major plus, but I think it is offensive to dump a whole truckload of bait to attract deer. I think maybe 1 or 2 bags at the most. Mark Guine from Lapeer. Baiting should be minimized. 1 or 2 bait piles per site. 25 to 50 pounds of bait per pile should be sufficient. Well, when you consider these regulations, you have to consider how are you going to enforce them? I mean, how big is a handful? And what if a hunter brings his bag of bait in a big elastic spandex bag? Or how would a conservation officer weigh out a bait pile? Bring a scale into the woods? Well, an easier method would be to use the 5-gallon bucket rule. Bob Lambden from West Bloomfield. Deer may not have the brain power of a human, but they do know that they do not have to rush out to the carrots that are there every time that they feed. 5 gallons per day is enough. Joe Sexton from Niles, limit them to a 5-gallon pail, not to exceed 3 kinds of bait: corn, beets, carrots, or whatever mix they choose. Scott Peterson from Fountain is more liberal. If the DNR has to do something, limit bait to 2 5-gallon buckets. And Mark Fett from Manistee is even more liberal. I feel the quantity of bait should be limited to 2 or 3 5-gallon buckets per day. Okay, if we use this 5-gallon bucket rule, are we measuring how much bait is on the pile at any one time, or how much you can add each day? And how would you prove just how many days you've been adding bait to the pile? Well, Brian Johnson from Comstock Park suggests a limitation on buying bait. Have the stores and places which sell bait limit the take of 1 bag of bait per person per day. This, I think, is a practical solution. Well, that's practical on paper, but how would you prevent a person from buying bait at 2 or 3 or 4 different stores in one day, or having people go buy bait for you? And what about buying in advance and stocking up? Well, Jack Parker promotes a preseason limitation. I suggest that the amount of bait set out at any one time be limited, say, to the 5-gallon bucket full, and that the bait not be set out more than a couple of days before the season opens. Carrie Stout from Stanwood promotes a post-season requirement. Many argue that baiting helps deer survive the winters. In my area, most hunters stop baiting when the hunting season is over. I average 3 tons per year of corn fed to deer over the past 10 years, all after rifle season. Perhaps baiters should be required by law to continue their feeding programs until the grasses start to green up in the spring. Well, feeding deer after the season is typically done on private land, especially the hunt clubs. And many private landowners put out tons and tons of feed during the winter, something that the DNR does not do on state land. But this argument between baiting on private land versus baiting on state land has gotten to be a big part of the flap. Now, remember, motor vehicles are restricted from driving off the roads on state land, which is why Mike Gerard from Hesperia says the 5-gallon rule would equalize the baiting opportunities. Restriction of bait to 5 gallons would be fair to the rich and poor, public land or private land hunters. Roger Kent from Sparta agrees allowing limited baiting will not punish those hunting on public lands. A 5-gallon bucket would limit the effect on deer as well as the effect on other hunters or non-hunters. Now, a guy named Pete faxed me a message that makes the case for restricted baiting on private land only, which would satisfy those hunters who find bait piles on public land offensive. He says there are places where a baiter won't disrupt a non-baiter, such as on his own land. I feel the man who pays the taxes should probably have the right to bait if he wants. This issue is very similar to smoking versus non-smoking. It's okay in your own home, but not in a public place. Tony Ferreira from Brighton says, I think baiting should be allowed on state land only. This would mean the deer would have to come off the private land to get food. Therefore, the hunters on state land would have a better chance of seeing more deer. Then we have those hunters who feel that baiting should be allowed for bow hunting only, such as Scotty Anderson from Grand Blanc. I would go for the 5-gallon limit, but would limit it to the month of October, giving bow hunters an opportunity for a close-range shot. Charles Stickney from Custer says, I can see but one advantage for the archery hunter to be allowed to bait: reduce the number of dead and wounded deer found during rifle season. When we rifle hunters have the capability to shoot a legal deer at a distance in excess of 200 yards, why, in the name of good sportsmanship, do we need an excuse to have a deer within 25 yards to be able to hit our target? Well, this is a question of sportsmanship, I guess, which we'll have to tackle all by itself in the future show. But from the standpoint of encouraging hunters to make good, clean kills, if baiting can bring deer in closer so that all hunters, no matter what type of weapon they use, can make a cleaner kill, why should we restrict baiting to bow hunting only? It would seem that if clean kills are the object, we should be encouraging this for hunters across the board. Now, a lot of hunters have been really sensitive and afraid that baiting conveys the wrong message, a bad image to non-hunters. Well, let's listen to what Lori Butler from Leslie says. She says, "I am a vegetarian non-hunter, but my husband is an avid meat-eating hunter and fisherman. I have no problem with hunting as long as you're not going to waste the meat. I have no problem with baiting, but I don't think you should be able to hunt right on the bait. I feel you should hunt on a runway leading to the bait." Well, let's think about this. Hunting along a runway leading to a bait pile. Well, this is exactly what hunters do nowadays when they hunt next to a farm field or an apple orchard, a oak ridge, or along a swamp. Now, if baiting was banned, what do you think would happen? I think we'd see bait piles popping up mysteriously all over the woods. Nobody owns them, but there would be hunters hunting along the runways that lead to and from these bait piles, just the way they do now around other food sources. So we're actually faced with the question of law that asks, if banning deer baiting isn't practical, are the regulations proposed to restrict deer baiting practical? Supplemental winter feeding for white-tailed deer is necessary during a hard winter because the deer burn up their body fat trying to keep warm when the temperature is below zero. They also burn it up when they have to plow through deeper crusty snow to find food. The DNR monitors snow conditions and wind chill temperatures in a number of locations around the state, from which they develop a numerical winter severity index. Now, when this index reaches 80, the biologists are concerned. When it reaches 100, it's a pretty sure bet that some deer are dying from malnutrition and exposure. Now, checking DNR figures this winter for the UP, in the past 3 weeks, Thompson went from 26 to 42. The highest in the UP is Shingleton and Dunbar in the low 60s. Now, in a normal year, these UP indexes are the highest in the state. But this year has been far from normal. The northern lower peninsula has had it fairly easy. The recent index was in the low 30s and 40s, although it is 52 in Gaylord and 58 in Atlanta. But the surprise is in southern lower Michigan. Point Mouillet is only 22, but look at the southwest. 68 at the Allegan Farm. That's the highest in the state. The DNR says the lake effect winds and snowfall is stressing the deer in Allegan. But Michigan's deer aren't in danger yet, and if the mild weather continues through March, starvation losses for 1995 will be minimal. Hey, if you are not a Ted Nugent fan, be sure to tune in next week. Ted and I have a real serious talk about his outrageous statements to the press about hunting, his embarrassing whack 'em and stack 'em slogan, his long hair, his image as the Motor City Madman, and how this rock and roll gonzo possibly can do any good for the image and the future of hunting. Like I said, if you're not a Nugent fan, be sure to tune in. And if you're a practical sportsman, be sure you get outdoors this weekend. It's a great place to be. See you next week.